Chapter: A Debate of Ideals. Theo and Lena sat on the edge of a sunlit terrace overlooking the crumbling yet breathtaking ruins of Atlantis. The air smelled of salt and the faint metallic tang of the metromite veins running through the city. Their cups of coffee sat untouched, forgotten in the intensity of their conversation. Theo leaned forward, his enthusiasm brimming as he gestured animatedly. "Lena, I've been going through the archival footage all night. The more I learn, the more I realize how extraordinary this civilization truly was. Their society wasn't just advanced, it was enlightened." Lena raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Enlightened how?" "Start with their society and culture," Theo began, his voice charged with admiration. They lived in harmony not just with each other but with nature itself. Everything they built, everything they did, revolved around balance. Their architecture wasn't about ego or dominance. It was about serving the collective good while honoring their connection to the environment. They had this deep spirituality, not in a dogmatic way, but as a thread that tied their lives together. It's as if every choice they made was guided by an understanding of their place in the universe. Lena smirked, a hint of cynicism creeping into her tone. "Sounds like a fairy tale. Meanwhile, back in the modern world, we can't even build a park without arguing over budgets or whose name gets on the plaque." Theo chuckled softly but pressed on. "It's not just their culture. Their economy was fascinating. They weren't capitalists like us. They didn't measure success by how much wealth one person could amass. Their commerce was based on mutual benefit and need. They were masterful traders, yes, but trade wasn't driven by greed. It was driven by necessity and collaboration. Can you imagine? A world where money isn't king?" Lena leaned back in her chair, her expression sharpening. "You're painting a utopia, Theo, but utopias don't last. Look at us. Our world is built on greed. The richer get richer and the poorer? Well, they're just collateral damage. Corporations hoard wealth, governments tax the middle class to death, and innovation is sold to the highest bidder. How do you compete with that?" Theo shook his head, his gaze distant as he stared at the ruins. "I don't think the Atlanteans saw it as competition. Their wealth wasn't concentrated in the hands of a few. It was shared, spread out. And they didn't use their advancements to exploit others. They used them to uplift their people. Even their education system reflected that. A holistic approach, integrating intellect and spirituality. They nurtured creativity, critical thinking, and moral responsibility. It wasn't just about preparing for a job. It was about preparing for life." Lena snorted softly, though there was a trace of bitterness in her laughter. "Holistic education? That's a dream. Modern education is a factory, Theo. You're measured by grades, by how well you conform to the system, not by how much you grow as a person. Philosophy, spirituality, those are electives, not essentials. And don't even get me started on the cost. Education is a privilege, not a right." Theo met her gaze, his expression pensive. "But it doesn't have to be that way, does it? What if we could take what we've learned here, what the Atlanteans left behind, and use it to fix some of what's broken in our world?" Lena sighed, rubbing her temples. "And what happens when we get the metromite crystal back? You really think the world will suddenly change? We'd be handing infinite energy to a system that thrives on corruption. Politicians would find ways to tax it. Corporations would find ways to sell it, and wars would be fought over it. The Atlanteans might have achieved harmony, but we're light years away from that." Theo's face darkened slightly, and he leaned back, folding his arms across his chest. "You're not wrong, but we can't just give up. There's a chance, however slim, that Metromite could inspire change, that it could break the cycle." "And what if it doesn't?" Lena shot back. "What if it just accelerates the mess we're already in? Infinite energy in a broken world isn't a solution, Theo. It's a weapon." Theo took a deep breath, trying to steady his frustration. "You're thinking too narrowly, Lena. Maybe Metromite isn't just about energy. Maybe it's about what it represents, what it could teach us about living better, about building systems that work for everyone." Lena stared at him for a long moment, her expression softening. "You're an idealist, Theo, and maybe that's not a bad thing. Someone has to dream big. But you also need people like me to keep you grounded." He smiled faintly, nodding. "Fair enough. We need both, dreamers and realists. Maybe that's how we take what Atlantis left behind and make it matter." The two fell into a contemplative silence, the ruins of Atlantis glowing faintly in the morning light. For a moment, it felt as though the spirit of the lost civilization was listening, nodding along to their debate, waiting to see if humanity would finally learn from its mistakes.